A sudden blaze aboard one of America's most futuristic warships has once again pushed the USS Zumwalt into the spotlight. The fire broke out while the stealth destroyer sat pierside at HII Ingalls Shipbuilding in Pascagoula, Mississippi, during a high-cost modernization program that is intended to transform the ship's mission and meaning. 3 sailors were injured, 1 rushed to a nearby hospital in stable condition, 2 others treated at the scene, and the U.S. Navy has opened an investigation into what sparked the April meeting incident and how deep the damage may run inside a vessel whose systems have been heavily modified. The image is striking an ultra-modern hull designed to slip through radar and to carry experimental weaponry, now tethered to a dry dock, smoke still settling in its wake for the Navy, and for taxpayers, the Zumwalt has always been a nexus of ambition and anxiety. Conceived as the crown jewel of next-gen naval warfare, the class was intended to rewrite T. He rules stealthier, more automated, armed with advanced 155mm guns that would deliver precision fires from the sea. Those big plans ran headlong into budget realities and evolving strategy. The original deck-mounted guns and their expensive munitions were removed. In their place, engineers have installed missile tubes tailored to the Navy's conventional prompt strike program, a long-range effort that could, in theory, deliver hypersonic attack options from surface vessels. That pivot is the story of a ship trying to outgrow its own past. Converting a destroyer designed around one set of missions into a platform for another is an expensive, technically intricate undertaking. The Zumwalt program morphed from experimental fleet centerpiece to a retrofit project whose costs have ballooned. Government audits cited in public discussion put the program's price tag into the tens of billions, with critics calling it an expensive experiment in naval excess. Now, as a service at Teton, Peach has to retrofit the future onto a troubled past. A still loftier notion has surfaced on strategy diagrams. A proposed Trump-class battleship, part of what some officials describe as a Golden Fleet concept. Early estimates being discussed privately and publicly suggest a staggering price exodus. Numbers tossed around range in the high single digits of billions of the teens, potentially exceeding $17 to $20 billion per ship, an idea that would, if pursued, redefine the scale of naval procurement in a single stroke. Such visions are born in times of geopolitical pressure. They are also contested in budget halls and congressional hearings, where every dollar for one class of ship is a dollar not spent elsewhere. The Zumwalt sits at that intersection, a platform that has never fired a shot in combat, but that has repeatedly been pressed into service as a symbol of technological promise, of cost overruns, and of strategic uncertainty. No single ship can be divorced from the wider maritime competition unfolding in the world's busiest choke points. In the Persian Gulf, a campaign intended to choke Iran's economy at sea has become a study in the challenges of enforcement across a vast and complex maritime theater. Washington has vowed to block ships linked to Iranian ports until Tehran agrees to a deal. On paper, the restrictions look forceful. In practice, ship tracking data, satellite imagery, and industry analysis together paint a more complicated picture. Traffic continues, vessels adapt, and enforcement strains to keep pace. There's been confusion over the scope and the parameters, said Bridget Diakun of Lloyd's List Intelligence. That succinct assessment captures the heart of a campaign whose rules and reach have been contested between diplomats, military planners, and commercial operators. Tracking data show dozens of vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow corridor through which a significant share of the world's oil and liquefied now. Federal gas passes, including ships with links to Iranian ports and vessels that should, in theory, be subject to restrictions. Once ships enter the Gulf, the picture grows murkier. Maritime analysts describe increasingly sophisticated tactics to obscure ownership and cargo origins. Transponders are spoofed to mask real locations. Ship-to-ship transfers move oil away from origin ports, and documentation is at times murky. Those methods make it far harder for enforcement authorities to draw a straight line between sanction policy and outcomes. That operational fog matters because the Strait of Hormuz is as strategic as it is narrow. A disturbance there can ripple across global markets and raise the temperature in capitals from Washington to New Delhi. On a recent day, a tense calm was shattered when gunfire erupted and Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps reportedly opened fire on 3 commercial vessels navigating those volatile waters. Among them was a cargo ship bound for Ind. EA's Gujarat named Epaminondas its voyage from Dubai, abruptly turning into a fight for survival. According to maritime monitors, the attack came despite a fragile ceasefire that Washington had extended. Warnings were issued and, according to reporting, ignored. When the shots were fired, Iran's state-linked outlets said the IRGC had acted. Epaminondas, flying a Liberian flag and owned by a Greek firm, became a focal point of competing narratives. Social media trackers and maritime analysts reported that Epaminondas and another ship, MSC Francesca, were considered seized, while a third, Euphoria, managed to reach the United Arab Emirates. Accounts on platforms that monitor tanker movements flagged the seizures and raised alarms about the practical limits of enforcement in the Gulf. Iranian authorities, for their part, issued direct statements explaining their actions. The IRGC framed the detentions as law enforcement against boats that violated declared regulations. In a public relay, they described the seized vessels as operating without authorization, tampering with navigation aids, and endangering maritime security. The statement read, in part, that the ships were transferred to Iranian territorial waters in order to examine their cargo and documentation. It added that the IRGC Navy had emphasized that any action aimed at disrupting the enforcement of the Islamic Republic of Iran's declared regulations for transit in the Strait of Hormuz, as well as any activity inconsistent with safe passage through this strategic waterway, is continuously monitored by the IRGC Navy, and violators will be met with decisive action. Those words carry weight beyond the immediate seizures. They are a statement of intent and a test of resolve, and they complicate any narrative that the American maritime campaign is either comprehensive or uncontested. If enforcement is selective, actors on the water will seek gaps if one side declares a blockade and the other side warns of re-seek. Prizzles, the gray spaces between those statements, are where incidents and miscalculations happen. Across the globe, the incident in the Gulf prompted competing political narratives. The U.S. president issued stark warnings about Iran's condition, asserting that Tehran was collapsing financially and suffering steep daily losses and unrest within its ranks. In Tehran, officials pushed back. Iranian Agriculture Minister Gholam Reza Nouri insisted the blockade had failed, that food supply lines remained steady, borders were open, and resilience held. Those contrary claims underscore a broader contest, not just of ships and sanctions, but of messaging. Each side seeks to demonstrate the efficacy or failure of pressure in the court of public opinion and the arena of statecraft. The seizure of vessels and the hard rhetoric that followed carried a new dimension when Iran's top military command signaled full readiness for war under certain circumstances. A spokesman for the Qatam Al-Anbiya Sea Intral headquarters warned that the country's forces would strike American and Israeli targets with full force if they attacked Iran. The statement, delivered in uncompromising language, made clear Tehran's threshold for escalation. In a passage that left little room for interpretation, the spokesman declared, the spokesperson for Qatam Al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, following repeated threats by the U.S. president and senior commanders of the the aggressive and terrorist army of this country, stressed their full readiness and warned that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran, in case of aggression and any action against Islamic Iran, will immediately be met with a powerful assault on predetermined targets and will deliver another deterrent lesson, far more severe than ever before, to aggressive America and the child-killing Zionist regime. This is a kind of rhetoric that quickly closes the distance between naval seizures and strategic risk. It is also a reminder words from official mouths travel fast and can harden into policy options or into pretexts. Back in the United States, the Zumwalt fire offered a domestic counterpoint to these international tensions. One vessel, docked and being reimagined, became a tangible symbol of the limits and costs of modern warship projects. The program's transformation from advanced naval gun platform to a potential hypersonic strike node raises fundamental questions about the right tool for the job and the right bill to pay. Hypersonic weapons are alluring. They promise speed, reach, and a new layer of deterrence, but they are also technically demanding and expensive, and they are not yet fully ready for operational deployment aboard a ship class that was not originally designed for them. This brings us to a central tension in defense planning: how to reconcile technological aspiration with industrial capacity, strategic need with fiscal reality. Ideas like a new battleship class or a golden fleet do more than capture headlines. They begin to shape procurement priorities, congressional negotiations, and international perceptions of intent. At sea, those decisions manifest as fleet composition, patrol patterns, and the baseline readiness for crisis response. The recent episodes in the Gulf and the pierside blaze in Pascagoula are connected by a single thread: uncertainty. uncertainty about how well maritime restrictions can be enforced across vast waters, uncertainty about how modern naval platforms can be repurposed midlife, uncertainty about whether rhetorical escalation will become kinetic conflict. Each incident raises practical questions. How will the Navy repair and validate systems on a ship that is now central to a new strike vision? How will commercial shippers navigate a theater where rules are shifting and enforcement appears uneven? How will diplomatic channels manage the immediate fallout from seizures and the longer arc of deterrence? Those are not rhetorical crues. Stations, they matter to sailors, to merchants, to lawmakers, and to citizens who pay for fleets and depend on stable sea lanes. The answers will be drawn from a mix of hardware fixes and policy choices, shipyards and supply chains, clear legal standards and comms between navies, better data sharing and enforcement mechanisms, and perhaps most importantly, a candid appraisal of what a fleet should be asked to do. For the sailors who went to the hospital and for the crews navigating the strait, the stakes are immediate and personal. For policymakers and taxpayers, the stakes are systemic. A single fire on a pier can force an expensive, time-consuming reset in a ship's modernization timetable. A seizure in the Gulf can ripple through markets and alliances. In both cases, the immediate headlines are only the first paragraph of a longer story about strategic choices. As investigators work to determine what ignited the blaze aboard the destroyer and as maritime monitors continue to document NTET movements in the Gulf, one theme emerges with clarity. The modern maritime environment is an arena of intertwined technical complexity and geopolitical volatility. Stealth hulls, hypersonic ambitions, ship tracking algorithms, spoof transponders, and legal claims of authority all meet in narrow channels and wide ocean stretches. Each incident tests the limits of control, whether the control is over a weapons systems integration, a shipyard schedule, or a campaign of maritime interdiction. How those tests are answered will shape the next chapter at sea. Will the Zumwalt become a functional node in a hypersonic era or a cautionary tale about retrofit? Will the maritime effort to pressure Iran tighten into a robust interdiction, or will ships and oil find creative and risky ways to bypass it? Will harsh rhetoric and seizures produce deterrence or escalation? For sailors, shipbuilders, and diplomats, the answers will not come overnight. They will be hammered out in repair. They will be hammered out in repair. ARDs in tracking rooms, in ministries, and on decks, far from Washington and Tehran. In the meantime, the smoke from a ship in Mississippi and the gunfire in a narrow Gulf Strait are reminders that modern naval power is both highly technical and deeply political. The sea remains a place where hardware, policy, and human decisions converge, sometimes in a flash, sometimes in a long, costly retrofit, and where the consequences are felt across oceans and economies alike.